Hello there, Mike Henderson here with another installment on how to typeset your novel using Open Office Writer, and specifically no tears typesetting. All right, we've gotten to the point now we're going to look at some of the finer points of typesetting. There are certain conventions, maybe not rules so much, but the object is to make the text look as even as possible. No big fat spaces between words, no dangling words at the end or the beginning of a page, and so forth. So before you do any of what we're about to do, you should go through the whole book and put in your chapters the way you want them. And also the section breaks. Here's an example of one that I put off to talk about until now. There's a space down here that really should not be there because it is not the end of a chapter. It is a different section. So I'm going to backspace, and that page break is or whatever it was goes away. Now what I do when I distinguish between little sections within a chapter is I will put it here, so I want a space here and a space here, so it clearly delineates it. And I put in what I call squigglies. So we're going to go to Insert, Special Character, and this is the minion version. And then I have here this thing I call squiggly, and I'm sure that somebody knows the real name for that, but I don't. So I put it, three of them in a row. So I click on it 3 times, and you see it comes up here. Say OK, and it appears here. I want it centered, and that's how I divide sections. So you need to go through, before you do what we're about to do, is you need to go through and divide up your sections and your chapters. So here's another example. All right, so here is the pound sign or the number sign that you would use probably in standard manuscript formatting. I'm going to replace it, so I'm going to backspace to get rid of the indentation. I'm going to space once to put it down. And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to, by the way, for a new section, I do not want the indent. I don't know if that's not necessarily a rule, but it's what I do to make it look good. So then I will highlight the thing, go up here again to Insert, Special Character, find the little squiggly, 1, 2, 3, whoops. Yeah, I only did it. Do it again. Insert, Special Character, 1, 2. All right. So now it's a total of 3. Again, I highlight it and center it. And there you go. And so on. Now, a couple of conventions which are pretty close to rules that you want to follow in typesetting something. One is that we do not want any really spread out text. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see what's going on. So let's go down, because you can see it a little better. This is a little spread out. I'll have to decide whether or not that offends me. That looks good. Sometimes it's really spread out. In any case, you want to try to make it as tight as possible without these spaces. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One is by hyphenation. So a lot of times if you have a sentence where you have a line rather where it looks like it's spread out. I don't know. Let's look here, for example. This is a little spread out for my taste. What can I do? Well, I can fool around with this character spacing and so forth, which I'll demonstrate here. I highlight it. I go to Format, Paragraph, and this is only going to change what I have highlighted. And sorry, I wanted to go to character, but I go to Format, Character. Sorry about that. Because I'm going to fool around with the spacing between the characters, and the spacing between the characters often will improve the spacing between the words. Here it's set at 97% for some reason. Okay, fine. I will go to the spacing is between the characters. Now watch down here what happens. I'm going to put condensed. I can squish it up a little bit. Now watch this. I'm going to put in a 0.1. Watch this down here. You see what it did? It moved it just a little tiny bit. It squished it up, and that is often enough to improve things. So I do that, and then it looks pretty good. You see, it took away the spacing that was weird in between here. The same thing here. Maybe you can look at it and say, well, you have to use a judgment. It's a judgment call on your part to try to make it look as tight as possible. Not all squished up, but it has to be sort of a common block without a lot of goofy. So I'll go to Format, Character. Again, I'll try to condense it, see what happens. Only do a little tiny bit, which is 1/10 of what they call a point. I say OK, and you can see that it kind of squishes things together. The other thing that you do not want is a stray bit of text at the bottom or the top of a line. Now, I prefer to have 2 full sentences at the bottom or at the top. Now here I just have one. It's almost the whole line, it's just indented, and this does not bother me that much. But here's the thing, there's a couple things you can try. This is a big paragraph, so if I highlight this whole thing and I say Format, Character, because I'm going to squish it up a little bit, I could see where there's some room for that. Condensed, 0.1. And what happened? Well, it cleaned it up a little bit, but it did not expand. It did not cut it enough to bring this up. So there's a couple things you can do. There's one thing is you can say, well, that's good enough. Maybe I don't like the spacing in between here. Maybe I will condense it. So I can do Character. And then I can condense it a little bit and see what I think of it. And to a large degree, this is trial and error. So, maybe it looks better, but it's still that way. If I can live with this, which I often will, if it is just one line, it's almost the whole sentence, I will often leave it, because the more you fool with it, whatever you do here affects everything after it up until the next chapter break. If you really want to cheat a little bit, so here I need to get a space, I would like this line to be on this page. So I would just go up here and I'll take away one of the spaces. And what happens? Well, it did what I wanted it to do, and everything is hunky-dory. And this you can get away with because usually the chapter is not, this side of the page chapter title is not next to one on this side, and the difference then is not obvious. It's a subtle difference, and you should be able to get away with that. Now, here's something you cannot tolerate. One word or two words or whatever it is at the top of the following page. Well, this is, again, you have to look to see what you can do, because you may want to, there's two ways to get around this, usually. You can either expand a paragraph so that it adds a line. So you find a paragraph, I don't see one here, but if you have a paragraph, like this one might be a good example, or this one is even better. Here it is. This paragraph ends right at the line, right? So I can add a line here by just going to format character. And instead of condensing it, I go down here. Actually, I may be able to expand. Whoops. I could expand it going in this direction and make it 100%. And you see what it did is it spread it out a little bit. It's not offensive, or you can decide whether it's offensive or not, but it moved it down one line. So instead of ending here, this now ends over here. That means this whole thing was kicked down a line, and now we do not have a stray word at the end of the page, I hope. Right, so it was crimes, right? So now it says, it has this. Now, is that acceptable? It probably is, but actually if I could go back here and try to find a way to cut that, I might. So here's another one. It's got one little word over here, so you may be able to get rid of that by going to the character, format character, spacing, condense. We'll condense it by 0.1. See what it did. Well, it didn't do anything, right? So then we can say format character. Maybe I can scale the width a little bit, one more down, and then it did, right? So it's a little more scrunched up than the rest of it, but it's subtle and it's not that blatantly obvious. This has this sentence down here, and then it's a full sentence here. And then as we go down, now what we've done is we've created our problem again because we put crimes back by itself. So as you can see, it's a matter of like dropping a pebble into a creek. So we might undo that, and it's okay the way it is. It comes down here, and the word crimes is not by itself. This is acceptable. And you go through and you do that, and you've got to just look carefully and see what is going on. And if there's something that needs to be kind of tightened up or corrected, then you can go in and hit format character for whatever you highlight. This will not apply all through the document. And say, well, what if I condense this a little bit? It looks a little spread out for my taste. So I'll put 0.1 and, clean it up a little bit. Now, for whatever reason, when I did this, there's a few sections that did not get turned into minion font. I don't know why, and since this is typesetting without tears, we're not going to bust our head and try to figure out why it happened, because we know how to fix it, maybe by fudging it a little bit. So we leave the cursor here, we'll go down, shift, click, and it selects it, and then we just go ahead and turn it into the font we want, size 11. Whoops. Go back. Why didn't it do it? Come on. All right, so there it is. And it's fixed. And as you go through, you may find that here and there. And you just fix it that way. Now here, right, we can't have this either, right? So we've got a chapter break here, and we have half of a sentence hanging down in the middle of nowhere. Well, what can we do? Well, this is the type of thing. Now I look here, and well, here's a whole paragraph, and a lot of it is kind of spread out. So I will just highlight the whole thing. I will go to my format character, and I will condense it by 1/10 of a point. This is my great weapon. I can do a lot with this. And you see what it does. It tightens it up. It looks better, and it gets rid of that stray page. Now we have a stray page that we go here and we do a backspace, and it gets rid of it. There you go. And that is pretty much it. There's one other thing I want to talk about is the page numbering. Since I've done it this way, the page numbering is quite simple. I have the footer. I'm going to insert a field, page number. There it is. I want it centered. And this is Times New Roman 12, which I do not want. That's page 9, but don't worry about that because I'm going to show you something in a second. I'm going to highlight this thing. It's going to go to, I don't know, minion. I want it to be 11. I want it to match. It doesn't have to match. You can make it any font you want. And there you go. So now we go back. Since that's the footer, it automatically goes back. Here's chapter 1. Is that? Oh, okay. So what we're going to have to do, here's what you notice. I've seen books do this where they will count all the front matter and then they start numbering pages with that. But we're not going to do that, so we're going to go to Format. Paragraph. Oops, Format. Wait, let's go to Insert Field, Page Number, and then okay, what we're going to do is you right-click on it, Fields, and Offset. So we have here a situation where I'm 8 pages off. I got to do minus. I got to subtract 8 pages, right? So I go, whoops, minus 8. Okay, and that comes up to 1, which is what it is. So if that happens, that's how you can correct it. And that should do it, and this goes all the way. Now, of course, we haven't gone through the whole book and straightened it out, but that is, that's pretty much the size of it. So there are other things you can do. Take a look at my video on drop caps, because there's a lot of things you can do to jazz this up. A lot of books don't have any kind of extraneousness. Sometimes, for example, I like to, at the beginning of a section, like here, I will take the first few words, and then I will make them uppercase. That's what this is. This is too big, so I kick it down to about 9, and then you've got a little finesse. Another thing you can do is watch the videos on drop caps, but on occasion you want the first letter to be a big letter in the middle here. So you do that by going to Format, Paragraph, Drop Caps, display the drop caps, and here it is, right? So in this case, we want the first letter. I want it 3 lines. You can make it 2 lines. You can make it 4 lines. You do whatever you want. 3 lines, I find to be a nice number. Spacing the text is 0. Character style, leave it. Okay. And there it goes. Now it's highlighted, but if you were to do a print preview, page preview rather, you go up here like this, and it doesn't, it's not highlighted. It's just a big letter like this. So that's one thing. I've got a whole video on how to do those things, and that's that. So good luck. Once you're done with this, you have this all squared away in this program. All you need to do is click on the export directly as a PDF. It does that, and then you upload that to CreateSpace, and you have yourself a nice book. All right, take it easy.